Yeah, there was a couple of things. There's a letter from John Law which we put up on the site, and there's an old letter from Lee Ferguson, which I think, without actually going back to it, talks about the rooting, pushing hand in relation to Tai Chi, pushing hand, Chi Sao, etc. I believe that was the thing. With the rooting, it's preserving your root or preserving your dynamic center or your dynamic equilibrium. It's what with the pushing hands. What always got me about it was always like a victory if the guy moved you an inch, but it was, to me, it seemed to be out of context of the actual fight, in that it was a conditional fight. The condition being if you moved, then you'd lost the fight, but the point really of a fight is not whether I push you over there or off balance you here or pull you down or push you back or what the hell I do with you. It's whether I can capitalize on that off balance. So in other words, it's rather like my conditional training with a left hook, where you train exclusively with a left hook to try to knock the guy out, and the guy's learning defenses against that as well as thinking about his possible counters. But it isn't the fight. It's only a condition. And sometimes what happens is that the pushing hands, if you like, becomes the fight. Or the fact that the guy touched you becomes significant to the point that he could have killed you, which would be true if he had a knife, but he doesn't. And he knew how to use a knife, or was fighting somebody else with a knife. Or he was able to, in those short ranges, release, the touch, as I'm doing on the YouTube, is in the only, as a touch, is only valuable as if within a very short space of time you could make a strike. So the pushing is sometimes, for me, it's the pushing hand idea of collecting hands or throwing guys all over the, it's a great idea, because basically when you do something to somebody, when you hit him, the best time to hit him is when he least expects it. And with the off balance, it means even when you're throwing somebody, if you've got them off balance, it means that they cannot counter for that moment. And they are effectively being hit or thrown when not that they least expect it, but when they can't do anything about it. And that's what the entry breakdowns of karate essentially are about, where you might take a lead hand, insert a foot on the outside of his leg, knock him off balance, so his head's going this way, and now you're actually hitting him while he's in an off balance position. You're hitting him when he's off balance, and it adds to the effect of the blow, but it needs to be done on the basis that you could continue to perform blows or the maneuvers of off balance. So, and always with the preserving of balance, it's a thing you have to do more in the context of a fight than a spar, in the sense that we're now going to do pushing hands in a kind of friendly way, which it has to be if it's a conditional fight. But the truth is, it has to be done at an intensity which is representative of a fight. And that's what I do in my conditional fighting. So sometimes, to me, it becomes a replacement, or it has become a replacement for fighting, and much is made about it. In other words, if the guy is 240 pounds, he can root like a mountain, not because he's rooted, but because he's 240 pounds. You're not. What do you do if you're a little guy? You've got to use. What happens in a fight? You don't know. Sometimes you'll be attacked in restricted space. Sometimes you'll be attacked when you're essentially relatively standing still. And so you have to practice for those two things, to make use of space on the ground, or to be able to counter things which are coming at you too quick, if you like. They've occurred too quickly or too closely to you, so that you can't adjust your feet, and whatever adjustments on your body, you're making adjustments on your body because you haven't got time to move anything else, particularly against a knife. So it has a sense of, there's a sense that it makes good sense, but only if it's done in the context of everything else, and it's not done in isolation, and it's proof of this guy, a person's ability to fight. I don't know if I made any sense there.
Well, I was just thinking that there seems to be an almost religious significance attached to this idea of root.
Yeah, and there is no such thing as root. You can't root because you're not a tree. But what you can, and that's why the most significant thing about rooting is the pressing down, is because you've got proscenium corpuscles, and those anti-gravity muscles which prevent collapse are being initiated because you're actually pressing against the ground. So all those extensor muscles which are actually to overcome the pull of gravity are being activated simply because you press. The press is increased by the placement of the head over the foot.
Right.
The leg is loaded.
And that's the posting.
That's the posting leg, that's the axis. So the idea is sometimes plant your feet. Plant your feet, sure you're planted, but the idea of the plant is to get a up reaction, which is initiated through the pressing, some reflex action, but also through the stretching of muscles which are also undergoing their contraction. In other words, they're already undergoing the contraction. So we kind of jump into something else here, which is some of John Law's stuff. In other words, the muscle, a spindle in the muscle is embedded in the muscle. So the faster the muscle is stretched, if you like, the faster the spindle is stretched. And the spindle itself, its level of reactivity can be set by the gamma reference system. I think it was Meissner, H.E. Meissner said that tonus, locution is it? I think balancing it, and locomotion or movement is all dependent upon the myotatic reflex, the stretch reflex. So, for the stretch reflex to be initiated, the muscle itself is already, the quad is already undergoing contraction.
Right.
And now I'm making the stretch on it. So the effect is, you're not stretching slackness.
You're not relaxed in that sense.
You can throw slackness, but it has to be initiated with active muscle. You're stretching. If we say this was the muscle, and movement is produced by both the stretching of the seroelastic component of the muscle, actin and myosin, but it's also made by the stretching of the of the spindle within which which is embedded in the muscle. And the rate of strength, the final length of strength is a phase, is a tonic, like balancing. So it's reliant on the final length of that stretch, and the rate of the stretch is a phasic. So what martial artists, we're looking for stability, and we're looking for what? Explosive movement. So that we recruit those fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers which upon stability and dynamic movement are reliant. If you look at this, and we've got an elastic component here, and the restitution of a rubber band, if we're going to stretch it, it's going to reshape, but go back to its original shape. What I always thought was, how do I know that my gamma reference system, if you like, can set the threshold of reactive response, so that basically no stretch of the muscle can take place in order to initiate a myotatic response. In other words, I don't need to stretch the muscle to actually initiate it. I can actually stretch the spindle and produce a myotatic response.
And the spindle is stretched by the impression? Is that set by the impression?
Yes, set by it's reactive because
so neurally that's been set.
That's already been set, because if you didn't have that facility, you'd always be too late in a situation. So that's why you need to be able to read a cue.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but can I just slow you down on that for the slow-witted amongst us?
Okay.
So the case where you've got a gym bag and it's got some clothes in it, and you tell the guy to pick it up.
Yeah.
And he picks it up, and he's set for that, and then he
You
walks away, and you take the bag away, and you sneak it in. You put loads of weights in there, and he doesn't know it, and he goes to get it, and
his muscle memory
is wrong.
His muscle memory is initiating the impression of what what his last impression of that weight was, and setting the reactive sensitivity of the
spindle. So that's the phenomenon of the gamma efferent system setting the spindle. So that's set by the impression.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry.